Awareness, the final frontier. This is Awareness Explorers.
Welcome back, fellow explorers, to Awareness Explorers. I'm your co-host, Jonathan Robinson. I'm with my friend and co-host,
Brian Tom O'Connor.
And it's always great when we get to interview someone. This is someone I know and have worked with personally, so I'm particularly interested and excited to ask him questions I've always wanted to ask him. His name is John Travis. He's a founding teacher of Mountain Stream Meditation in Nevada City, where I live. And he's been a student of meditation since 1969. His vision and teaching have been very important in the growth and development of Buddhism and meditation in the northern Sierra Nevada region. I shortened his bio because it's very long, but John spent many years with recognized Asian Buddhist masters, including the Dalai Lama and Neem Karoli Baba, who you might know as Ram Dass teacher. He has deeply studied Tibetan Buddhism, traditional Buddhism, and yoga, and has been an ordained monk in various Buddhist and Hindu orders. He has spent 10 years living in Asia, much of it in retreats. John's a senior teacher with Jack Kornfield at the Spirit Rock Meditation Center and a meditation counselor trained in Hakomi and alchemical hypnotherapy. He's the author of Taking the One Seat and soon to be out an autobiography. And you can find out more about John at mountainstream.org. Well, John, welcome to Awareness Explorers.
Thank you.
So where to start? We know each other because I saw you really as a counselor when I was leaving my spiritual group, and you were very helpful. I really appreciated that. And of course, I've been to some of your talks at Mountain Stream. But I'm wondering, you're approaching 80 years old. You have a lot of accumulated wisdom. What makes, say, your teaching and your background unique in terms of what you offer to people on retreats?
Well, I think, thank you, Jonathan and Brian. I think more than anything, I'm around some really smart people. So I'm not that smart, but I'm definitely committed. And so I think of it as much of my practice and my teaching is based on ultimately about the heart. But Buddhism, as you probably know, has a very disciplined side of it that I'm also very aware of and have been committed to for 50 years.
Yeah, and sometimes systems favor one of those, like the discipline or the heart, and trying to get both of those together can be challenging.
Yeah, well, I like one of Ramana Maharshi's teachers, Sri Nisargadatta, said, wisdom tells me I'm nothing, and love tells me I'm everything. Mm-hmm. Somewhere between the two, my life flows.
Yeah, and you have a very broad background. I'm wondering, Tibetan Buddhism, regular Buddhism, Hinduism. You've spent a lot of time with a lot of different teachers. How has that impacted how you see the world, and that you're not just solely in one system?
No, I don't think freedom is anywhere near just one system. It's actually something that I hope is somewhat a collection for people, that they the whole process. And, as life is, certain stages of your life, it's good to have certain teachers during that time. It's not just, I think there are certain teachers that they're just one and it's good enough. But I like the diversity of having not only different teachers, but also in different systems. Mm-hmm. Kind of an overview of how all the systems work, you know, on some level, as again limited somewhat, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like that too. And I was impressed by the fact that even though your main interest and teaching has been in Buddhism, that you use a quote from Nisargadatta, whose background is Hindu. And I think that's great that I think that today, in today's non-dual world, there's a certain amount of sectarianism that's grown up. And have you encountered that? And if so, how do you help people out of it?
You know, I think people have to grow up. They have to see that there isn't just one way, and get some sense of um, the width and the breadth of spiritual practice. You know, and I spend a lot of time in my talks and stuff these days. I'm really interested in how awareness, which is non-sectarian, which is always available from birth to death, and how can we, you know, find a way to plug into that on some level? And for me, that's the most important thing. How do we plug in, you know? And I don't think there's any, you know, I mean, I have been with a lot of different teachers over the years, and I've spent probably a dozen years in Asia, and I found more than that. But I found there's always, I was just a sadhu, just a kind of a wandering mendicant for many, many years. And I lived in caves, I lived in communes, uh, but I never stayed. I remember in 1970, I was living with Osho, Rajneesh, in Bombay. I just happened to be there, and I got invited to stay in his apartment. He was a professor at the time, and it was really, you know, it was like, oh, here's another another person, another system. And I remember he said, "You're going to stay. I'm going to send you to Pune," because they had just bought some land or something in Pune. And I said, "You know what? I'm just a sadhu. I'm just moving on. But
Mm.
I appreciate your dedication, you know." So that's what I did. I just kept moving on.
Well, you've known a lot of famous teachers, Osho. I'm very curious about Neem Karoli Baba. You know, I've heard about him a lot, of course. What can you say about all these different teachers that might be interesting or useful for our listeners? Especially if you have anything to say about Neem Karoli Baba. I've heard so many stories about him.
I know, and you know, I actually was there when I was traveling with Ramdas, and I happened to be in the room when Ramdas gave "Be Here Now," the
Mm.
quintessential Western collage of a book. And I just remember Neem Karoli picked it up, and there was one other person in the room, and Ramdas, and he took and threw the book across the room. And I realized, oh, he was really, you know, Ramdas was so inflated on a certain level at
Yeah.
that, you know, uh, and he had just, you know, he had this great book he had done, and America was so into it, and Neem Crowley just took and threw it across the room, you know, and it was kind of deflation right away, you know. But it was that's what it was supposed to be. I remember going to I went to Maui at the end, and I went to see Ram Dass, and he had changed so much from when I first knew him and traveled with him and stuff. And he definitely got broken down, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was so impressed, you know, after I wheeled him around at Spirit Rock after his stroke. And I would say, okay, I'm going over there, and I would start to take him in. He said, no, no, I want to go the other way. So he was a cantankerous. Could be very after his stroke, he was
Yeah.
cantankerous. But then he changed, And when I saw him in Maui, he was just a love bug.
Yeah.
He, all that, the old Harvard professor, critical thinker was gone. There was just, you know, this is the way it is, and I love everything and everybody. And that's really who he was at in that time. And it really shows you that these practices can change somebody uh,
Hmm.
so dramatically. And he changed.
That is a very heartening story, and it reminds me of something that you wrote in your book about training your mind to be in the heart and how that leads to acting and speaking from loving kindness. And I was wondering if you could maybe add some more details to that process of how training your mind to be in the heart leads to loving kindness.
Well, first, it's the first word, training your mind. So there is a lot about because we're so fickle. We just kind of jump all over the place when it comes to, in a sense, spiritual endeavors. And I do think you have to train your mind first. That's paramount. And then when that mind is trained enough, like a little puppy dog or something, then it really can show its love.
Hmm.
And but if the mind is not trained, and this doesn't necessarily work. It's really to me, one of the great assets of Buddhism is that it trains the mind to then point towards the heart.
Hmm.
I think that's imperative.
Yeah, I was on a retreat about a year ago, and there was this guy that was just exuding love. He wasn't a spiritual teacher, or he didn't think of himself that way, but it was clear that he was. So I asked him about it, and he said, "Yeah, for the last 3 years, I've been in a state of like pure love all the time." And of course, I'm always interested in how people get there. And he said he came up with a 5-second mantra that always, if he's in his head, he goes into his heart. So of course I wanted to know what that mantra was, and it was drop and soak. It's drop from your head to your heart and soak in the love. And so I've been using that a lot, just as a quick reminder throughout the day, drop and soak. And like what you said, John, that if my mind, if I hadn't done 50 years of meditation, I wouldn't know how to drop the mind so much.
Yeah,
And of course, that's an ongoing process. But I think if you wanted to tell somebody what spirituality is about in 5 words or less, that would probably be a good definition.
that's a great definition. And we spend all these years, in the sense, trying to, and this is the thing. There's nothing to achieve in these practices. I mean, there's the whole thing, and of course, I come out of very dualistic kind of teachings in the sense of Tibetan and then uh, Theravadan Buddhism. So there was all this mind training that happened that was based on the fact that once the mind, in some ways, was trained, then it could, and not everybody, because it doesn't happen for everybody. But then the heart opens, and
Mhm.
there's no more fear, you know, and that's huge. We are fearful creatures, you know, and amazingly fearful. And particularly guys, we don't even recognize it. It's not something that is apparent. It's just simply something that holds us in captivity, in many ways, because it is our nature. Yes, preserve the person, but uh, fear is that confines that person, thinking that
Mhm.
somehow that fear and sometimes the reactions to it are how this works. And
Mhm.
that's not true. You know,
There's another way.
there is absolutely another way, you know,
Yeah.
and yes, fear, is a necessity uh, in certain situations. But you're talking about maybe, 5%, and the rest is not, you know? And so it's amazing that such a simple emotion can kind of color our world, you know.
Hmm. We had a guest, a teacher that I like named Jeffrey Martin, and he used the analogy that if you get a bird and put it in a cage, it's always looking for predators, and fearful that something's going to attack it, but there are no predators. And we're kind of like that. We come from a place where we were eaten by tigers or killed by other tribe members. Now that almost never happens. And yet we're still, every moment, what's the problem? What do I need to be afraid of? And it's hard to let go of that.
It is, and the thing is that uh, we have primal conditioning. You're born, you have primal conditioning, and one of those primal conditionings is being, in essence, kind of afraid of the world, and we have to learn not to be afraid.
Mhm.
And too bad parents didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in your book you said you spent many years uh, of with a sense of trying to learn to control, and you said a lot of that you thought was out of fear of mistakes. So I think that reaction to that fear, I mean, there's practical fear. If you're afraid of buses running you over, it might help you from preventing that happening. But it's the emotional fear or the fear of that people will think there's something wrong with you. And it seems like you stated that the reaction to that is control, and that seems like such a major obstacle.
It's huge. It's something to have people learn to trust. I think that's a huge word, to trust in their very nature, you know, and in the sense that um, we have to get out of our own way a lot of times. And that's actually something trained. It's, oh, I'm okay. I can hang in there.
Mhm.
Then we do, and we go, well, why was I so afraid of what?
Hmm.
And we're interesting creatures.
Being that you've spent a lot of time around famous and not so famous teachers, I'm wondering, uh, did you find that these people, besides their teachings, had transmissions that helped you? That's something I've been curious about. And what do you think about, we've interviewed some people where their whole spiritual thing now is transmission. And that's, I think, relatively new, but you've been around some of the great teachers. What was that like in terms of just an energetic phenomena?
Well, I think in this late 60s, when I first went to India and then Nepal, um, I, I, well, gosh, there were so many people, but the Karmapa, the 16th Karmapa, uh, came to Kathmandu in the end of, I think, the end of what was it? End of, I don't know, late 60s anyway. And he came, and his presence was so powerful and overwhelming. It was like, oh my God. I came out of the Western diaspora here that all, people were just people, and nobody was different than other people, and, unless they had more money. It was interesting kind of fact was that here was this Tibetan Lama that, and I can say they had a particular power that was palatable. You go in the room, you could almost feel it.
Yeah.
And with Neem Karoli Baba and even Osho, and when he first started teaching, when he had just went from professor to kind of guru, and it's definitely had an energetic. And Swami Muktananda, that was another one. Incredible powers, that they had fostered, and then, they were the conduit for it.
Do you think that's very helpful?
Well, I think it can be helpful and confusing.
Hmm.
People then believe the person, not the message. And it's
Right.
the message that matters, not so much the messenger, you know. And the problem is that, in the Indian, what's been passed down through the Indian system is really devotional practice where you abandon yourself for other on some level.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that there's a bit of naivety there, uh, you know, that we have to kind of stay aware of, because we've seen, so many spiritual teachers, we're famous for uh, forgetting our precepts, or, it's just happens over and over again, that.
Why do you think that happens? You would think that, these people who are very into their system have achieved something, and then it seems like at some point many of these teachers have gone off the rails, and my congratulations to you for not being one of them.
So far so good, but I'm also 80 years old. I think, but I know that even, people my age screw up,
Mhm.
and why? Because they have endeavor for spiritual excellence, and the human factor is still there, and so they. I think what happens is they're pretty good at the beginning. It's like Osho, pretty good, and then you kind of, so many, as longer they do it, then they seem to go off rail, and
Yeah.
I,
Being in an environment where everybody thinks you're a god is a dangerous thing.
and well, when people put that much belief in the human condition without really taking in their frailties. I, I was living in Boulder, and I was kind of studying with Trungpa Rinpoche, and boy, he was a character,
Yeah.
and he, the thing I have to say, everybody goes, well, he was kind of a womanizer and all these things, but the truth is that he was straight about what he did. He wasn't hiding it, where we have so many others that they're able to hide it for years, and then boom, and everybody that believed in him suddenly is out the door.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they didn't hold the precepts. They didn't hold, you know, which is important. The precepts are so important. And it's one of the things why I've kind of stuck around the Theravadan scene. We haven't had any, terrible um, explosions,
Mhm.
where it seems like every other system, you know, uh, blows up. It's like, oops, he was supposed to be like a god, but he actually is just a human.
Yeah. Yeah.
acting like one, you know, and trying to hide it too. That's probably the other thing that's so terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, part of our focus in Awareness Explorers is asking people about methods, and you've explored a lot of methods. I'm wondering what you can say about methods in general, or anything that you might say that would be useful to listeners in terms of the value of methods, the danger of methods, any method that you recommend.
Well, first of all, I would say keep it simple. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, I was with the Tibetan system. I did mantras for many years, and which were really helpful, great. Simply because I'm ADHD, and it's like I'm all over the map on certain level, and mantra practice really helped. And then the insight practice of just being with the breath, as it rises and passes, is it's so simple, you know, and so method actually, at least in the beginning, really helps. I've been doing this for a long time, and I don't care for methods much now,
Mhm.
but that's me speaking, 50, 60 years later, and so I don't really have much interest in method, but I see how important it is, particularly for I just came from teaching this retreat, and I had my granddaughter there who's 16, and I know that to actually be very precise in what you do and how you sit. And boy, she was one great sitter. It was really fabulous. I had my grandson, his her brother, came to Thailand with me 2 years ago. He was about that age, and yeah, he's 19 now. So, and it takes that introduction. It would be nice, I think it. What I'll tell you a little story. I was thinking about this. I went to this. I was in New Delhi. This was probably 70, 71 or something, somewhere in there, maybe 72. And it was Krishnamurti's group in Delhi. And so I went, and it was amazing. First of all, these Indians were so in their heads. They had no idea that there was anything besides this, talking head. And it was disappointing to me because I thought, well, do you know where your feet are? you know, and I don't think they did, And I mean, it was obviously a very intellectual group, but you know, I don't think they can get to heart through that. You know that, and this is my stick, is that somehow they have to find a way to, it to me, it's there's three aspects to this. There's mind, there's heart, and there's body, and you can't skip any of those. They all have to be brought in, and it may be that there's different disciplines for hatha yoga for body. There's you know uh, there is mind training from either the Tibetan or the Theravadan system, and but ultimately all of it. And Neem Karoli was really heart based, and I think all of these come together, but each of them are somewhat separate. You know, so and I guess that's what I'll say about one teacher.
Mhm.
Um, we are not. Uh, we are human beings, all the teachers, and so don't expect too much out of them. They are just, you know, in a sense, following what they taught, or their one moment of awakening that they carry through. You know, and I think we all have this in the culture. We have this, we're an incredibly bright group of people that have these moments of insight, which you could say they are non-dual because they are. There can't be one thing or another. They're simply an experience that breaks through the conditioning, you know,
Mhm.
and uh, and that's all I'm really. In some ways, that's all I'm interested in these days. What breaks through to um, breaks the conditioning so that a person is more based on freedom than they are on habit. you know?
Mhm. Now you lead a lot of retreats and have for years.
Yes.
Um, uh, because I'm lazy, I've only been to a couple like retreats, like 10 days. They're challenging. Um, what in this day and age, my skepticism about retreats is that you can have an experience, but then it's hard to integrate any of that into our busy lives. And I'm wondering what you can say about the value of retreats and how one tries to integrate an experience from a retreat.
Well, I think retreats are a necessity. How's that? That somehow, and maybe it's just at the beginning, but there needs to be a we have to drop out of our society to see our society. you know so you have to drop out to see what it is that works for you. And
Hmm.
I think it's to me why I've these last 50, 60 years I've done a lot of retreats, and I think they're so important to create the kind of steadiness that's necessary in such a chaotic world. And it's why maybe this has become such a to me, important part of Western culture. If we could actually have more of this, the culture would be better off.
Hmm. Like counterbalance to the crazy busyness of the rest of our lives.
That's correct.
Uh-huh.
And it's gotten absolutely crazy. And you know, and I think it's really hard. And with the politics and the truth of what the cultural complexity that we inhabit, you know, it is so in some ways kind of disappointing on one level. Another one is I hope it's the impetus to look more for awakening than for more material or knowledge in any way.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
hope.
there's plenty of suffering, so the motivation's there.
I think it is, and it's why I mean, when I came back, what in '76 or something like that, I knew that somehow that this was what the culture needed. Now, I was not. I want to thank Joseph Goldstein and Jack Kornfield for being. Well, I told them I don't want to teach. I said I'm not a teacher. I'm just a yogi. And they said, no, we need you. And then since then I've had other teachers, and I say, oh yes, we need you. We need what you're doing right now.
Hmm.
The culture is in some ways is on this materialism and a path to self-destruction. And I mean, that's a little heavy, but it's true. We can say whatever we want, but the truth is that, you know, uh, this culture and this, you know, I mean, I wonder if staying in America is really okay for me. I'm only here half the year anyway.
Hmm.
I'm in Thailand most of the time, so I have for the last 10 years. Uh, why? Because there, I live in a very poor neighborhood. I mean, there's really poor, you know. It's not a slum, but because there's isn't. But everybody does something there. So there's
Hmm.
street people, you know, unless you're totally bonkers, you know. And everybody seems to take care of everybody. And even though I speak very little Thai, but I'm in a Thai neighborhood, and I've been there for years, you know, in a one room kind of apartment. In these one rooms that I live on this floor, I mean, everybody cooks in the hall.
Wow.
Uh, and sometimes there's three or four people in one room, you know. And that's the way, and sleeping on the floor. That's the way it's been for a long time. They don't complain. They don't think it should be different. And I'm just impressed with their ability to accept their kind of lot in how it is, you know.
Hmm.
And I'm always very moved by that, you know.
Yeah, I've spent some time in Thailand doing service work, and uh, at first it was like I'm going to help them, and then I saw that no, they're helping me, because the people, especially out of the big cities, are very sweet, and it rubs off. It has a big effect, and that it's a whole different way of being in the world.
Right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree, you know. And I'm a, you know, that's the thing. We think that, you know, education, money, all this stuff makes for great happiness. But what I think is happiness is based on happiness. You know, people, uh, their simplicity is their happiness, and our complexity is our suffering.
Hmm. Yeah. Well,
And I mean, I do love it there, and I love it here too. Uh, but there, it really is the East West. It's so different, and we're trying to pick up some of the East, some of their disciplines. I wish there could be more acceptance in our culture, you know. But you know, we're a very busy culture.
yeah. Yeah, I read in your bio, John, that you do trained in alchemical hypnotherapy. I was a hypnotist for many years, and I'm wondering, uh, is that any part of what you're teaching is how that's affected you, and what do you mean by alchemical hypnotherapy?
Well, okay. It was, what can I say at this point in my life? In the past, you know, I certainly used it, and it was a great training. Um, but at the same time, I felt it was limited in comparison to someone doing a retreat, for instance. You know,
Uh-huh.
so no, I worked with, you know, I did a lot of one-on-one work with people, and now I just do groups. I mean, I kind of I just teach, and but it was so interesting that the alchemical part of it was the fact that a person, you have this ability to go into someone's psyche basically, and I'm going to say this, soften who they are. You know, that's really was the objective, was to soften who they are,
Hmm.
because there is so much um, we are such fearful creatures, and most of us don't even recognize it, you know. It's just that if something is presented that is not within our knowledge, our experience, that we react to it. And so if there's some way of softening that, and I think that's where the alchemical hypnotherapy really worked. And so did my work in Hakomi,
Hmm.
body-centered psychotherapy. And I am most grateful to all the training that I did. But I also am at the other end of it. You know,
Hmm.
what matters to me now is a good heart, you know, and that's what matters. And the other is to train us out of old habits, old fears, old attachments. You know, we have to somehow get beyond that. And then there is this wonderful world we live in. It's so great, you know. We've been, we circle around it a lot, but the center is, you know, it's never been a problem. It's always been at rest, and and we circle around it somehow, thinking that through these methods or systems we could get there. The truth is, we're there already, you know, and it's somehow learning to accept that that's who and what we are. You know, we don't have to. You know, this is the thing. I spent many years in this attempt to awaken until I realized I was awake.
Hmm.
And then it was a matter of, well, how am I going to act now that I understand the parameters of that? You know, and this really, I have to say, you know, one of the wonderful things has been the precepts in Buddhism have been, they're so important, you know, and I've screwed up, but we've all screwed up, you know, and and I just think those precepts are fundamental to a one of my teachers, Munindraji, he always said, you know, uh, to honor the precepts is to honor the peaceful mind, you know. And someone who doesn't follow those precepts, you know, there's always a little bit of tinge in the back of the mind about, you know, whether it's taking or, you know, I think in my business, one of the big things in my business is sexual craziness that has happened through all these teachers through the systems. They just, you know, they forget the precepts
Hmm.
because they think they're beyond it. And the thing is, you're never beyond it. It's always part of the human condition because it's about don't harm me and don't harm another. And somehow in that we end up getting caught and causing harm. You know, I mean, I don't know how many teachers I know that, you know, through the years have screwed up. Um, and I know those who haven't also, you know. I was thinking of, and I don't know all the story of the Karmapa, you know, but he understood that and understood the levels of that. And I think Neem Karoli Baba, you know, there are those who uh, kind of had their path and they stayed on their path. And there are others who slowly it began to loosen. And as it loosened, then they kind of compromised with the precepts.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Very,
I'm wondering if you have any last questions before.
yes.
Sure. Yeah. You know, it was, well, since we're called awareness explorers, I want to return to awareness. And in your video, Observing Your Mind, you mentioned that that you preferred the term awareness to mindfulness,
That's
and that that it's what's holding everything, and asking the question, is it a problem? And you also said that recognizing what's already here. And to me, that's so important that everything that we've spoken about today, people think that they're going to get something from outside, from a teacher or a practice or anything, instead of turning to what's already here, that's already allowing, that's already loving, that's already kind.
Great. Thank you for that, Brian, because that's really what it's about, is that it's like you're whole just the way you are, you know, uh, even if you're damaged, you
Hmm.
know, but you're still whole. And I think because that's true, that there is such a great, you know, opportunity to be, to exhibit that on some level, you know. And to me, awareness is something that you were born with. It's something that holds all things. It's not behind you or in front of you or above you or below you. It's in all directions. And therefore, uh, it gives you that permission to, uh, see through a lot of the stickiness of our, excuse me, mental gymnastics. you know,
Hmm.
Hmm.
truth. And here is this awareness that has never been boxed in, it's never been held, it's not exclusive to anybody. It is not just for the high gurus and the low cellas. It's actually just available. And because it's available, you know, you always have a finger on freedom. You can always kind of turn everything off and touch that freedom because it's something you were born with. And so, in many years, I tried to achieve some higher ideal or something, and uh, and then I kind of got it that, oh, I'm already that. Why am I why am I struggling so much?
Right.
Because I'm walking around in it, and of it. And so, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that when I recognize I am awareness, that everything I thought was separate is now one. And so now that everything is everything. And of course, I live in a way, a pristine world. Um, but I try to go, when I go to Thailand, I'm not in a pristine world. I'm in you know, the locals, but they're also kind and they don't, I'm the only foreigner and gosh, in maybe a mile in any direction. But they accept me because that's what they do,
Hmm.
and that's the way they were trained. What's wonderful about particularly the Michis and the that when you turn about 16, that 16 to 20, right in there, that you will actually have to leave and go and live in a monastery for 6 months. And in that time, you're kind of taught what the basics are.
Hmm.
And of course, there's all the stuff about robes uh, and begging and all that stuff. You learn all that stuff, but every Thai you're going to meet has been through this, males, and the women have served, the Michis, and now they're nuns, but it used to be there weren't so many, and and life was based on this incredible, truth that awareness and loving kindness are the bottom line here. They are the bottom line.
Hmm.
And uh, awareness is something you have to train yourself to see on some level. And I'm sorry to say train, but it's true. You have to actually be aware and look at it. And then there is the loving kindness, the heart of all teachers and Buddhas. And it is accessible here and now.
Hmm.
I don't think the 6 months of monastery is going to work in America, unfortunately.
Encryption, before, at least you guys are old enough to know what this is, you know.
Hmm.
And I know, they tried to draft me in 1966,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah, you told them no.
I told them no. And that's, what's great about that is that when I first went to Asia, I had a 1Y, so I knew they were going to find me. And I think I flew back in 74. And in those days, you went to Hawaii, this on the West Coast, and from Asia. And they stopped in Hawaii. And the FBI gave me such a bad time. But I realized they just had this idea that somehow, I'd skirted something that no longer existed.
Hmm.
That I don't know. They did the numbers, and then there was something else, but it didn't exist anymore. And so they were really just barking up a wrong tree. And fortunately, I knew that, and I just went, well, okay, yeah, okay. I can never get a job at the post office. Thank you. That's
What,
actually
what
what
what a sacrifice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can live with that.
I could
Well,
live with.
yeah.
But it was true. You know, and there wasn't any. There was at that point. I came back. I had been wearing a skirt for 5 years by then. You know, in the sense of monastic robes and stuff, and I felt so. I don't know. Uh, this was like coming into a foreign culture
Hmm.
at that time. You know, they call it reverse culture shock,
Mm.
Yeah.
and coming back here, and but I love the people here. I mean, let's say I was just teaching for the last week, and such good hearts and such willingness to follow rules and train. It's pretty marvelous. And they understand the simple truth. This awareness is not dependent on what they train in, that that's
Hmm.
something to be there. You know,
Well,
they
I'm
have to.
wondering if you would guide us in a meditation to bring us back to
Sure.
what's
Yeah.
true.
Okay. Let's do that. Let's just take a moment first to just to note your body sitting there, you know. Um, and I like, whether it's your feet or your butt on a chair, pillow, bench, whatever. Um, the idea is that the mind, and that's what I was saying about the Krishnamurti stuff. It was all in the upper frontal lobe. And here is this whole body that is our great gift and teaching, you know. So somehow just grounding your attention in your body is such a primal practice. And I think what I want to do, I want to just do a little short kind of body awareness, is uh, is just start by bringing your attention to your feet and just feeling this marvelous thing that makes contact with the earth. And then allowing that awareness, that attention, as you kind of explore and experience the feet, then to just allow that, it's kind of like allowing a river to flow, because it is flow, is just to bring your attention from there into the ankles, the heel, the calf, the shin, up into the knees, and from the knees into the thighs, and from the thighs, just to connect with the buttocks, whether it's, again, on a couch or chair, pillow, or something, whatever it's on. It's just that's that ground for the torso. And then from there to bring the attention into the belly, and noting for a moment that there is in the torso itself there is a rising and falling that's going on. The breath actually moves everything in the body, and this body is just a transient experience of movement, and the breath is a great, in a sense, kind of teacher that's there, and just to allow your awareness to note the breath as it rises and falls. So we can go to the lumbar area, the spine, the muscles holding you up, the experience of the belly, the diaphragm, the lungs, the fingers, the hands, the palms, and the thumbs, and then the wrists, and then up through the forearms into the upper arms. Up into the shoulders. And just again, I'm just trying to move us through so that there is a sense of the whole. And as you do that, you can just bring attention to the shoulders and to the muscles holding up your head, the neck and the throat and the vertebrae in the neck, into the complexity. Why do we go to the head so much? Is it has the seeing, the smelling, the tasting, the taste, the hearing, the seeing, and the thinking. So just exploring these sense doors and bringing attention to the head, and particularly to the crown of the head. And from the crown of the head, just noting this thing called awareness. You are already there, but it's acknowledging. So there's the whole body sitting where you are. There is the nature of your mind and its capacity to incorporate or hold all things. And that as you hold all things, there's also this basic goodness that the heart cares. It cares for you. And it also, when it looks out the world as a non-separate thing or not fearful thing, but actually just an open awareness that has a home in the body, but is not of the body. It is just simply, this is how the awareness needs a home, and yet at the same time, it incorporates everything in front of you, behind you, each side of you, above you and below you. So there is no one thing or one place that's more exclusive than anything else at this point. And that's the kind of practice I like, is just this open awareness. It holds everything. And so there never was actually a separateness. That was the delusion. And so you sit in the center. And even though it's not really a center, it still has some sense of knowing that everything has to pass through the awareness, through the body, through these sense doors, and somehow interpreted through the mind, the heart, and the body. So those 3 points, the mind, the heart, and the body are the fundamentals of this. And you may have to study the body for a while. You may have to study the heart for a while. You may have to study the mind for a while. But they're all here as a means to kind of break this delusion that somehow separateness is something that is concrete, is concretized on some level. And that's not true. That's what we have to break. And then, of course, there's apprehension or fear or some kind of excitement, and it simply arises and passes away. It's not a thing. These are states that arise due to conditions, and then we can, in some sense, see through them.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
I
beautiful.
like the mind, body, heart system. In our podcast, we sometimes talk about two wings like yin yang, but planes actually have two wings and a tail, and you need all three to soar.
That's correct.
Excellent. I also loved the term sense doors, and I really got a jolt of that during the meditation when you started with the sense that you started with noticing the body. And the thing about it is that noticing the sensations in the body can only happen now.
They're always present. Yes.
Right. And so the thoughts about the past and the fears about the future are not there in noticing the body. And it is a door, which then in your meditation you led us to awareness. So I thought it was a beautiful progression.
Well, thank you. It is a beautiful progression. Me.
Yes.
Well, thank you, John. You're a treasure of accumulated wisdom from many traditions, and it's nice to feel your heart and your wisdom that comes through from all those years.
Well, thank you. That's what I would hope, and I have to just, extend it backwards because I think of Neem Karoli Baba, the Karmapa, Muktananda, Osho, or Rajneesh, or whatever, and Munindraji, and my friend Joseph Goldstein, and Jack Kornfield. I'm such a mix of all these people, and but I do know. I keep coming across that. Oh, you know what? I know.
Mhm.
It's no problem. And
Love that.
free to know.
Yeah.
And I think all of us have this capacity, but it's just how do we hold this, And for many people, they have to go through a progressive process, and I actually support that.
Yeah, that's great. I totally agree.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, it's up to you to what we like to end on is keep exploring.
Keep exploring. Thank you for listening to Awareness Explorers. To learn more, you can check out our website at awarenessexplorers.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. We'd love it if you would post a review. And please share our link on Facebook and with family and friends, because knowing yourself as awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself or someone you love.